entrepreneurship ecosystems and partners. Doing it from behind. We're really supporting the partner, the Vietnamese partners. And so I want to acknowledge that. Hud and I were in Switzerland 2 weeks ago to celebrate the 10th birthday with the Swiss government and with many of the entrepreneurial success stories in Basel. I noticed over here, I counted up, there's about 1 century of professional experience on this side of the room. I only have 40 years myself, so there's a lot more professional experience here. So I like your idea of it being a dialogue. I do want to, launch some ideas and some new memes and some new themes. I have a few what I call aha moments here. I don't know if there'll be aha moments for you, but we'll see. You can tell me later. So I would like to focus. I want to do 6 things here. Some will be very quick. So why innovation's a priority? That's very quick. You know that. I want to give you a bit of an expanded definition, as well as the official definition of what is innovation. I'd like to then focus on how to measure innovation at 3 levels: company level, provincial level, and national level. I'd like to share lessons on innovation parks. We know we have innovation parks here, Ho Chi Minh City. We were the other day in Hung Yen, where there's going to be a new park. And so sharing some ideas about how to design those lessons. So it'll be a quick history of innovation parks with a lot of pictures, and then some of the best lessons of how they work well. And then about financing innovation. I know that's very important. Fund of funds, venture capital, the right blend of public and private. And then summary with a few aha moments. So we know, I'm not going to go into this, but we know that this is very important now. We know the Politburo decisions and resolutions, 57, 59, 66, 68, etc. We know the targets. We know that, this is our framework. We're not asking why. We know that this is what we have to do, and we know that the government has given us the direction. So we know what to do. Now we have to figure out how to do it. But I just want to say that there is great evidence, quantitative evidence, that supports the correctness of the government priority, because whether it's the research of academics, economists, or the World Bank, or the World Economic Forum, I've been involved with the World Bank. I developed our competitiveness analytics. Also with the World Economic Forum for 5 years. I was working with the World Economic Forum on their competitiveness council, looking at the metrics as well. And we see that indeed, so many countries get stuck in the middle income trap. Unless, we're going to talk about how we can break out of that, but unless we can, then we cannot achieve this objective of being a high income country by 2045. This, I think, is doable for Vietnam, and we'll explain how. But let me give you an aha moment. So the second thing, so we're already through one of the 6 points. The second point is, what is innovation? I'll give you the formal definitions in a moment, but here's the aha moment. Yes, innovation is new products, new services, new processes, new modes of delivery, but it is not just commercial and science, company, technological innovation. It is also social innovation. It is also government innovation, effective ways for government to communicate with citizens, to deliver services, to improve the quality and the efficiency of what it does. So let's remember a broader definition. Innovation also applies to government. We can have hackathons for government ministries and government agencies, and social innovations for the well-being of citizens. So this is, we were in Ho Chi Minh. We were with the Prime Minister at the World Economic Forum's autumn presentation, and he really stressed this. It is not just innovation for innovation's sake. It is not science and technology for the sake of science and technology. He said, keep in mind people and the impact on the lives of people. So I think this is very much in keeping this broader definition with the Prime Minister. minister's emphasis. So these are the formal definitions. You'll receive this, but I'm not going to like read them. So World Economic Forum and the OECD and the World WIPO, which you're familiar with. These are from the formal classical definitions. That's fine. So, but these are the real Vietnam. The Vietnovations. We see that Vietnam is already doing lots of innovative activity. So that's good. Now I'm 1/3 of the way through my presentation. We're now the next 3 will be longer. But the question is, how do we measure innovation at the company, national, and provincial levels? So here I want to, we'll get to a hot experience. This is BCG and how they measure company innovation, global mind share, and peer review, industry disruption, value creation. They have very specific ways. I know that for those of you thinking about a fund of funds and venture capital, how do you measure the effectiveness of companies on innovation? There are a number of companies in the tech parks, science parks. They're not really doing a lot of innovation. So how do you measure whether a company is doing innovation? So I'm sharing with you here one source you can use in the future. You'll have all this to look at. There's R&D intensity. You can measure that at the company level as well as the national level. Human capital, absorptive capacities, organizational process, digital infrastructure. But these are input indicators. I'd like to, here's my aha moment for you. So I developed this some years ago because I thought people were taking an overly mechanistic approach to indicators. And I saw that as you evaluate company innovation, it changes over time. You have to have different indicators at different points of time, probably for government initiatives as well. So I call this, I invented this is the PAIR framework. So we have to, first of all, we have to pair capital with companies and governments with companies and researchers with companies. So, pair means 2 things coming together. But what I mean by this is first, you look at process indicators if you're evaluating a company. Do they have the right people, the right partnerships? And then afterwards, are they doing the right processes, engage the right groups? Then the action indicators, prototypes and proof of concept. And then the third is investment indicators at various stages, from angel investors or some funding in the incubation stage, especially the accelerator stage. And then the valley of death, the other financing to get you to the point where you can access real venture capital and others. And then the most important one are results indicators, growth, profitability, market shares. So remember that over time you have input indicators, output indicators, and outcome indicators. And that's also true for countries. When you look at how Vietnam's doing, you can measure input indicators, output indicators, and outcome indicators as well. Okay? Now, however, companies don't compete alone. They have to be, as Michael Porter showed us for many years, it's about a cluster. It's about supporting industries. It's about supporting institutions. And we see that on the measure of cities or industry clusters, neither Hanoi or Da Nang or Ho Chi Minh City are yet in the top 100 of city competitiveness clusters. But that could soon change. I think we're seeing improvements in those indicators in the cities. And with the dynamic policy changes coming, I think we can get into the top 100, and along with San Jose and Silicon Valley and Shenzhen and other places like this. So I just on the provincial level we have measures as well, and this is the rankings of the Provincial Innovation Index. I think I was with the author a year ago, the person who developed this, and we were talking about it in the 10th annual Tech Fest, where the Prime Minister spoke, and I gave a keynote speech one day in that Tech Fest, and so this is very important because we say in business school you cannot manage what you don't measure. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it. So that's good. Now, I wanted to show you something at the province and city levels that I worked on with the World Economic Forum. It's old. It's about 10 years old. We published this in 2015. But some of I think the principles are still valid. We studied 32 cities and regions. And we found a few things that were important. Our connectivity. I'm glad to see a subway system here. Need a lot more. But it was the soft connectivity, the innovation ecosystems that were really driving the competitiveness of cities. The what, that's well understood. We kind of know what to do to create a competitive or innovative city. It's the how that is the hard part. So, and then we have at the national level how to measure, and we see that. I'd like to also note that my sponsor, Switzerland here, I didn't make this up, but they're number one. They're like, Switzerland is number one on the national innovation. So get to know these Swiss people, because they have lots of lessons, and they know, her people over there at SECO, they know a lot. And we've been trying to foster some of these linkages. We brought a Vietnamese entrepreneur to Basel 2 weeks ago. We've been trying to form linkages with some of the science parks and innovation parks, tech parks there. But we can learn a lot from, these different institutions, human capital, infrastructure, market sophistication. But inputs, again, I'm saying inputs, but also outputs and also outcomes. One measure. I think you know this, the target for research and development as a percentage of GDP. Some of it's government research, some of it's university, private sector. But the top performing countries, doing about 3% of GDP, not government budget, GDP. So government budgets are typically 1/3, about 30% of GDP. So if they do 1/3 of their budget, that's only 10% of. So about 3% of GDP. Now we have some outliers, like Israel. So I worked a lot with Israel and the Minister of Economy there, and other private and public leaders in Israel. They're doing 5%, 6% of GDP and R&D. It's amazing. But if you target 2 to 3%, you're doing pretty well. So that's one metric. And the Swiss are doing 3%, and they have a very decentralized system because they have different cantons. And so it's not like you have a top-down government model. We'll talk about the different models, but it's interesting. Now, Vietnam is actually doing amazingly well for its level of GDP per capita, for its level of development. Vietnam already ranks 44th of 133 countries. This is an outlier in terms of where other peer countries are. So, and that's before the policies of the last year. This is before, the Secretary General, before the Prime Minister, before the President are launching all of these initiatives. So let's watch what happens to Vietnam and where it goes. Another thing on measuring the metrics, Vietnam is amazing, as you know, for STEM. Science, technology, engineering, management, the talent in this country, the numbers of people, the volume of people studying these things, very, very impressive. So, on the metrics, Vietnam is doing pretty well, but there's still a lot of work to do. And now this labor productivity always lags by several years. You can't get it for all countries except with. So our overall labor productivity, and I'm going to get to an aha experience about this, overall productivity still has some catching up to do with other Southeast Asia countries. Although this is old data, this is like back in 2020, 2021. So we'll see where it goes. So there's a lot of metrics we can work on here. One thing, the new WIPO metrics on innovation, one thing stood out this year from prior years. It's flattening out. In other words, many parts, they used to be like really big innovation centers. Now you're seeing innovation centers spreading around the world in the middle-income countries. And they even singled out this year, hot off the presses, they singled out Vietnam. They mentioned Vietnam by name it's diversifying across the regions, and its AI-powered innovation is now altering the speed and scale at which these indicators are going up. Now, your relative position may or may not change, but the underlying scores are improving rapidly in these countries. So I think that's very important. All of this is good background, I think, for NIC and what you're doing, and you'll have all of this. Now, okay, I did 3 out of the 6, so I'm halfway through the presentation. But you can tell me to sit down anytime you'd like. But let me just give you a quick, would you like to do a quick history of innovation parks with me? The first one was in my home state. My 2 kids, my 2 children went here, or 2 of my children went here. I have more than 2. This is the first innovation park. It was the Stanford Research Park, and it was started in 1951. They actually started putting together Stanford Research International in 1946. By 1970, it had become independent from the university. They showed up last week in Ho Chi Minh City, SRI International, because they cover the valley of death. They go through the startup research, and before it gets to the commercialization, they do a lot of development and financing of that. They're only in the United States and 1 office in Japan, but they're talking about doing things here in Vietnam. So I think that's interesting. And then this is generation 1. Then North Carolina in 1959, they're in the South. They had lower income per capita. They wanted to catch up with California and New York. So this was now, so Stanford was university funding. Maybe some partnerships with tech companies, but mainly a university initiative. This was what you might call the provincial, president, or the North Carolina governor, and the budget. And so this was a lot of state funding. But I want to tell you, because I also did research on this, I know them very well, we worked closely with them. It took them 2-3 decades. So you see they're starting in 1959 with a vision, a dream. Why do they call it triangle? 3 cities, 3 universities, all proximate to each other. Duke University, North Carolina State, University of North Carolina. And it's a very powerful thing. You go there now, it's very big. And we've had many projects with them and as a partner. But this really didn't take off until like the late 70s, the 1980s. It's harder than it looks. It takes time. Now it's amazing. It's an amazing region. But don't underestimate how long it can take from vision and idea until things are done. Then I want to talk about Cambridge. This is not Cambridge, Massachusetts, where Hub and I studied. This is Cambridge, England, Cambridge, UK. And I have a daughter who got her master's degree at Cambridge, so I went over there as well. Now, Cambridge, I have to say, in this area, is much better than Oxford. I mean, everybody knows Oxford and Cambridge. Oxford's older than Cambridge by a little bit. But this science park is amazing. And I think this was also with university funding. The university did this. And they did it to bring companies together in a park, this high density of scientists and PhDs and researchers to commercialize their research. So we're still talking, this is generation 2 now, really science park focused. And then you see them popping up in Japan, 1963 to 70, Hsinchu in Taiwan, 1980. You had this one in Beijing in 1988, and so many more. Now, generation 3, you begin seeing something different. It's not about a park. It is about an innovation district. So I worked with Barcelona. They call it Arroba 22. It's like the ampersand 22, age at 22. It was a whole industrial district. It's now repositioned to be a high-tech whole area. And Bilbao, also, similar thing. They have several parks, but it's all about the entire city of Bilbao being an innovative city. And then Kendall Square. This, of course, is a region, so I can't say there's an MIT Kendall Park. It looks like a park, but a different kind of park. So I spent a lot of time in Cambridge, and they have is. So that's the third generation. And now you're seeing a fourth generation ecosystem platforms like Station F in Paris. France tried to create the, this whole down by the Mediterranean, a whole tech park, and it was okay. I mean, I don't think it's been overly brilliantly successful, but they're now looking at the Station F in Paris, and of course we see Shenzhen as well, and we see ones in Japan. And of course we have here, we had a great presentation from Japan about an innovation park in Kyushu. I asked for a picture of it, and I got a picture of a real park, like with trees. So I couldn't show the park in my presentation. They have attracted TSMC, these chips. They have, and they also are, then you can share a little more on this later, but they also have a district, like the whole region, not just the park itself. It's called distributed science parks. They have several science parks that are all helping. So now, what are some of the, so I gave you maybe 15 examples of innovation parks, which will be very important in your innovation strategy to operationalize it and bring together. But let me just share a few principles. One, clarity of focus. I don't see a lot of successful generic innovation parks. When I look at Basel, we see tech parks by life sciences and various other things. So I think, the government has identified 11 technologies. I think you're aware of this, 11 leading technologies for Vietnam. But I don't think the park should do all of them. I think you should choose maybe 3 and really bring together a cluster of people. And by the way, I don't say triple helix anymore. I don't use that term because it's not just bring together university researchers, private sector, and government. No, it is so much more nuanced than that. You have to bring together your financiers. We need specialized research institutes. We need different kinds of financial actors in the ecosystem. We need lots of different kinds of actors. So we see that in Basel, you have one that's life sciences and biotech. In Israel, you have one for cybersecurity, another for desert technologies, et cetera, and many others. So having a focus. So if I want to think about why do I want to come to your tech park, science park, innovation park, I have to think, well, because I have this industry, this technology, I have to go there. So I think focus, very important lesson. Anchors first. Don't build it. Do not hire experts like me to advise you on how to do the parking. Do not do that. And do not go to another expert on parks. No. Here's what I encourage you to do. Talk to your anchor tenants, the big ones you want to attract to this park. Identify them.
People might eat them all.
Yeah, and involve them. Yeah, involve them in the design. So don't design it with what you think they need. Go to them, ask them what they need. Have them in, say, no, we want it like this, we want it like that. One thing they're going to tell you? We want flexi-lease. Flexi-lease. That's a new term too. I just made it up a few days ago. Flexi-lease. What do I mean? I mean, offer people whatever size they want to start with. And don't make it a year, 2 years, whatever time period they want, whatever size they want, and then make it easy to upgrade or expand, to go accordion up and down, expand the time, whatever, okay? That's just one thing they want. We'll see a few other things as well. But get the anchor firms signed up first, and then build it, okay? Principle number 3, I understand that most of the science parks, they're run by a committee, and this committee is established by government. And we don't see a lot of successful models with government-run tech parks and science parks, at least in the countries I've been working in. I was delighted to hear that in this tech park in Japan, Mitsubishi is running the tech park. Mitsubishi is having a role there, but Mitsui is actually running it. It's a professionally managed. The CEO of the tech park has to stay up late at night, not sleeping, wondering about how do I solve the problems of the people who are in my tech park. what do we have to do, and how do we wake up every day thinking about it? And, you know, if you do it by committee, then do you get the decision you need? You need somebody where they make the decision. So professional management, independent management of tech parks is one success factor we see everywhere in the world. Zero bureaucracy and solving all their problems. So again, demand first. So get the corporate commitments, the labs, the accelerators, and then you start building. And then the next principle is density. Okay, here's another thing I invented some years ago. I was working in Saudi Arabia with the second holiest city of Medina, and it was the king's knowledge economic city. And I said, well, when you design this in this city between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock on Pi, they were going to have the knowledge economic city. And I said, okay, funnels and forums. You know, people come in the morning, they leave, they go to lunch, they go places, and for those guys, they're like praying, and they leave and pray and come back. So do it so they naturally funnel out through places where they come upon forums, where you have all kinds of coffee places and tea places and interactions. You have just accidental conversations and innovations happening among financial people and among professors and among students and among PhDs and among companies. So you naturally have this. Now, I think a lot of people do this in a lot of places these days. But that density of interaction. And then provide all the services that they need in a park. One-stop shop, regulation, patent, tax, IP, utilities. By the way, I have talked to some companies, and they're not quite happy with the IP overall environment here. So they're not ready to outsource their IP in Vietnam because they're not sure they can trust the whole IP situation here. So that's something that has to be fixed if you're going to get people. And I have another aha moment coming up with regard to FDI in a second. So there has to be a value proposition. Like in Cambridge, it was the scientific talent. It could be proximity, industry, customers, fast regulatory pathways, whatever it is. And you have to think about the quality of life of the city where they're going to be expected to come. And then soft landing, I talked about FlexiBees, specialized test beds, autonomous vehicle zones, and there was in one case for biomanufacturing pilots. So where Hub and I went to school at Harvard Business School, they're now building a whole new engineering campus across the street, sort of in the neighborhood. And in between, you can actually rent space with all of the biomedical laboratory equipment, and you can do DNA, work and research and create things. It's pretty amazing. Like, you don't have to invest your own money, or your company's money in this. You have the laboratory equipment there, so that can help. So anyway, now we'll talk a little bit more about financing in a second. And again, R&D and tax, incentives are important. Low rent can be important, but it's not the most important thing. Okay? It's really not the most important. So there's non-financial, and that's very important. And then core infrastructure, wet labs, dry labs, that's what you're going to do. Pilot plants, prototyping, a lot of energy. One of the reasons why TSMC located in Kyushu is abundant clean water that they need for their chips. And then to develop over time, a lot of supporting infrastructure behind these. It's not just about the building or the park. Talent is the number one differentiator, so getting a lot of really interesting people there, that's really important. Here's the next aha moment. We've all heard about how successful Vietnam has been at attracting FDI. But from now on, when you hear FDI, I do not want you to think of foreign direct investment. I want you to think about foreign direct innovation. How do you bring international companies, Vietnamese companies too, and all the local companies down here, foreign direct innovation? How do you get them to outsource all of this brain work here? Israel has been very successful at this. Ireland has been very successful. So comes from their existing customers. So they go around to everybody, what are we doing wrong? How can we improve it? What do you need? How can you do more here? How could you do more sophisticated activities here and research? What do you need? And then they go to the government and they make sure that the companies need, and then the companies have headquarters say, I can do more here. It's cost effective. Let's do more. I'll move this. FDI is now foreign direct innovation. Okay. And then the role of regional governments. We can talk about that. You can talk about a 10-year. If you're doing a park, what you do in the first year, first 3 years, 4 to 6 years, 7 to 10. We were at Hung Yen Park, so this was relevant. That's why I have it here. Now I'm getting to almost the second to the last point, and the sixth one will be regulation. But this one is in detail. We can talk about it in work on financing innovation, bridging the valley of death, de-risking commercialization. We have a number of principles. And I'm not going to go through this in great detail right now, but I'll share this probably. But I think when I hear about a $20 million fund, it's not very much as a government fund. If I hear about imagining it to be an $80 million fund, $100 million, it's still not very much. So the question is, there's a role for government seed finance, but it is to de-risk, it is to send a signal, it is to catalyze. What you really want to do is create an environment where people are going to be coming in here because they want to make money, they want to invest, they think they can get better returns here than they can get somewhere else. They see it as a good environment and a big growth. And in specific areas, like agri-food or medical or space or what have you. And then there are a lot of other instruments the government can use, such as guarantees and portfolios. And I'll tell you one that I particularly like is eventually, but how you do PPP collaboration to create these things, and the tech parks can have a great return on investment because once you provide all these services, people will pay more rent or they'll buy places and make long-term leases or things like that. Now, I like advanced. One way to finance something, or to get, how do you finance a lot of really good research? Let me tell you. This is something I proposed back in the early 2000s, and a few years later, Bill Gates and others were doing this. What do I mean by advanced market commitments? It means if any biotech company can come up with a vaccine for, let's say, you fill in the blank, which disease you want to focus on, or a solution to a big health problem in Vietnam, let's say. In Saudi Arabia, it's diabetes. If you can develop a solution, or let's say, I was talking then about a malaria vaccine. If you can develop a malaria vaccine that works, then the US government or the World Bank will guarantee to buy 1 billion shots for people around the world who can't afford it. And we'll pay X, it could be $10 a shot, $20 a shot, so fill in the blanks. So all of a sudden, if I'm a biopharma company, I know that there's a $10 billion pot of gold there. And that's for the poor people. That's before we start talking about people who can afford it and want to do it in these countries who have the money to pay for it. So if I have to decide whether I'm going to invest, if I'm going to research the female version of Viagra or the malaria one, well, maybe I'll do the malaria one because I know that there's an advanced market guarantee, and that will stimulate private investment in research and development in a very practical way. And the government doesn't have to spend a penny. And as a matter of fact, the government can even find other sources. You can go to, some other financiers of health outcomes. You don't have to do it all yourself, but a serious, credible, advanced market guarantee can. We need to think out of the box on how to unleash a huge amount of private capital. Okay, I think I'm not going to go through, principles of private-public partnerships. And I'm not going to go through the framework for funding innovation. You can look at that early stage, pilot, market expansion. I think you're familiar with most of these things. And then the innovation capital stack from discovery capital, proof of concept, commercialization, scale-up, market access. And what should Vietnam focus on? We we can have discussion later about that. And then there's 5.1, so fund of funds. Unless you're interested in, we can talk about fund of funds if you're interested, but in the various stages of doing. The government puts in a first fund that invests in many private funds. We can talk about crowding in private capital rather than crowding it out or competing with it, and the kind of leverage you want to get. Usually about 30% is often a good metric. The IFC uses that in the World Bank. And you also structure an exit. Even the IFC at the World Bank tells you, you don't want to be here forever. You don't want all the profits. Like after a few years, if it's successful, we have an exit strategy, and we like to get out and it won't always cost you run away. What they say, sometimes the return of your capital is more important than the return on your capital. So there we go. So this is components of a strong fund-to-fund manager, a really good professional manager, having a really clear mandate, the leverage on the capital, good terms for the, how you get in is easy, how you get out is more complex, the co-investment and independence. So these are important principles. But it needs an ecosystem behind it as well. So you could look at the YOSMA group, or you could look at EDBI and Temasek for great examples. I think you're very familiar already with Singapore, so I won't go into detail. But YOSMA, I think, is a really great job. So I can give you 6 rules of fund of funds. Anchor but don't crowd out, build long-term capability, attract local players, provide predictable, non-political governance, design for the exits, be catalytic, not dominant, and then mobilizing lots of venture capital. And I can go through more lessons, but I don't want to. I want to go through this quickly. And also failures. It's even better to learn from the failures, not to do what didn't work. Government. I think the government is trying to avoid most of these now. So that's good. And so looking over the last 40 years, we went through stages of going from the enabling environment about infrastructure and training, and the enabling environment, which is about getting science and technology and skills. But we're now moving to the ennobling environment. So it means creating an environment where people feel good about the living conditions of where they're working and their interactions with people. And the ennobling environment is where you're helping people do things that robots can't do and AI can't do. They're really useful things. Like in Ireland, there's no tax on unique cultural products. So unique cultural products, artistic things that improve people's overall well-being. We could talk about who drives innovation, but I think you know all the players. And then, so here, now I'm in my last, this will be very quick. This is the last part of the presentation. I want to share, just reiterate a few of the aha moments. The first one was the new definition of innovation is how you improve not just productivity, but social cohesion and social innovation and government innovation. Number 2 is, I call it AI for the masses. So yes, it's wonderful you have this whole cadre of a large percentage of the population who are science and STEM graduates and technology. They're going to drive the next phase of performance. But don't forget about the only way we're going to get to be a high-income country in 2045 is if everybody's income goes up. But that means that everybody's ability to create and contribute must go up. How are we going to have AI helping the farmers, the retail people, the plumbers, the electricians to learn how to do things better, to learn how to make more money, solve more problems, show up on time at the right place, and things like that? How do you make everybody, the laborers, construction people, how do you make everybody more productive? I have a friend who said, every time I hire a laborer, I hire 2 hands, they throw in a brain absolutely free. So I think it's a good idea to take advantage of that. AI has to boost productivity for everyone, like the farmers, and even the people selling things on the street. And by the way, another aha moment I learned a lot about, innovation will create opposition. Get ready for museum, which has completely changed their reputation in global markets, you know, the Guggenheim, they were sued by the local architects and the local engineers who said, there's all kinds of talent here, you can't go abroad for this, it's a bad use of government money. But they fought that, the government did it anyway, and they brought in, and this world-class architect, Gehry is his name, he then actually worked with to upgrade the quality of the engineering and the architects in Bilbao, this region. And now one of those companies is really successful, has a huge office in London, and the standards that they had all went up. So that is also, so another aha moment is, you know, we think, oh, well, we have to have social safety nets and we have to take care of people at the bottom of the pyramid. No, it's not about welfare, it's about well-being. And how do you make people, everybody, be able to create and contribute? The purpose of life is not to consume, it's to create and to contribute. So how do you help everybody in the society do that? So welfare to well-being. And then Vietnam's openness right now is really going to enable that. I had a front page New York Times with me a week ago, and Vietnam was on the cover saying amazing openness to international ideas and people, and so that bodes well. And I already talked about AHA number 6, foreign direct relation. So I want to thank again SECO and my Swiss sponsors, and a company we're now merged with in Europe called CIVITA, and Swiss Contact, who are implementing this same project in 6 other countries around the world. We're doing, Jay Austin is doing Vietnam. So, come on.
Thank you very much. But now we see some